This Tank Girl mobile video is sponsored by HipChat.
Hey there, it's Tank Girl, and this here, yes, I know you know what it is the HTC One M9. So let's talk about what they didn't get right, and this is a bit of a rant. Let's talk about the camera, because HTC's kind of missed on the camera 3 times now. The HTC One M7 had a great camera in every way except, well, it had too few pixels, so you couldn't really crop or zoom your pictures very much. It had 4 megapixel, large pixels, ultra pixels, 2 microns, and it had OIS, which was killer. I mean, I took some incredible pictures with that phone. The things that made the M7 disappointing were battery life and processor performance, and a few little other things that could have been improved. But on the M8, they removed the OIS and they added the gimmick that is the dual camera, and we didn't like that. Removing the OIS was just a step in the wrong direction, and at the time, after the feedback we gave them about the not being able to crop and zoom, you'd think they would have gone up to an 8 or 13 megapixel camera. I told them from the day of the M7 that the ideal would have been to keep their old sensor that is in the DNA and the 1X and put a OIS module on there, and that would have been 8 megapixel OIS, and guess what? That's what Apple's doing with the iPhone 6 Plus today, and that is the killer. That is currently the state of the art. That is what everybody is trying to aim for. Lack of OIS is the big problem here, and the 20 megapixel sensor sounds great on paper, but as you know, megapixels are not the story. What really is the story is the quality of the image processing, and it is a letdown. I don't know how to explain this to you, but it gets to a threshold of level of light where all of a sudden all the pictures turn into jello mush, like a painting. Like noise reduction is applied so strongly that everything just looks terrible. Let me show you some pictures I took. So here's, by the way, the camera UI. Pretty much what we've seen on HTC for the last few generations. There is a manual mode, which is fantastic. Full manual controls. Everybody wants that. But without OIS, wah, wah, wah. So anyway, what else is there? There's, the usual HDR, there's panorama, and all that good stuff. Let me show you some pictures. So here's an example of a low light shot. And I had to hold the phone super steady for it. And I was rewarded. I bumped up the exposure a little bit, so I blew out the sky. But as you can see, zooming in here, you're getting a lot of detail on these buildings in the distance. Not too much of that oil painting mush yet. But I tell you, 10 minutes later, the sky got dark enough that I took the same picture again and I had to delete it. It was terrible. It was just so mushed up. My iPhone 6, doesn't have OIS, the regular 6, and it just totally nailed it. I don't understand why HTC, with all that expertise in imaging, can't do that. But again, it takes great pictures. Look at this. This is actually one that fit well into the dynamic range. It's a little dark here at the bottom, but you can't see it on the video. There's tons of detail. And the sky is perfect. Like, you've got this beautiful sunset kind of starting back there, and it's great. They nailed that. Again, I had to bump the exposure for this shot. But really great, lots of detail, no mushiness here. But again, this is kind of the threshold. If you go any less light than this camera turns into a complete disaster. Here's a great macro shot, lots of detail. Here again, you're benefiting from that 20 megapixels. Beautiful Ferrari Testarossa here. But again, in order to get the shot, I had to go HDR. Just the difference between the shadow and the sunny part, the dynamic range on that camera, I just couldn't handle it. But the end result, being steady, looks really great. You get lots of detail here. So again, 20 megapixels does pay off in that sense. Here's a great shot I took on my drive home from Petaluma. I took the scenic route the other day. And yeah, it's good. I have the same shot here without HDR, just to compare. And one of them is slightly blurrier than the other. But they look good. But as soon as you zoom in, you start seeing some of that mushy and the noise. You can see all that noise here. And that's what I'm talking about when I say this camera falls apart in low light. You can see it here again. So much noise in the background. Just insane. And so, it does take great shots. This is an HDR shot. This is the same shot without HDR. Again, I was trying to push the kind of low light performance here by trying, difficult situations. The Stinson Beach, you can see how much detail I can still gather. And then we're going back in time here. This is another great shot. Another one. Most of these are HDR though, because the dynamic range of that sensor isn't good enough. You have to be steady. This is an indoor shot in a grocery store in Point Reyes, and I had to actually like hold it steady, otherwise, with lack of OIS, you're gonna get blurry pictures. Another HDR shot. This is not an HDR shot, and it's interesting. It couldn't really get the focus quite right. It's actually focused on the leaves back there and not really the flower, but it does look good in the end. The sun's shining through. This is another great HDR shot. HDR again, and this is a good shot, but there's lots of light here. It's a storefront, and then this is a macro shot. I was trying to see how defocused I could get, and great, look at the detail. You're getting tons of good detail here. So in good light, this camera rocks, but every camera rocks in good light. And so here's an HDR versus non-HDR, and you can see the dynamic range here. I had to bump the ISO, sort of the exposure here, but yeah. And there we are, starting out in Petaluma, right next to the TWiT office. So, I don't know. I just don't understand why this phone is a flagship and they couldn't get the camera right. If Cher, you're listening, I know you're now running HTC and, Peter's taken a kind of another set of responsibilities, but if you're listening, please don't fuck up the camera next year, okay? Or if you give us a larger size HTC One this year, put OIS on it. Lower the megapixels, go to 8, go to 13, but please don't fuck this up again. Like, I do not understand how you can't get this right. You have one of the best phones ever made here in terms of the design, everything else, and then you mess it up with a crappy camera. I just don't understand why. And just to be clear, this is not crappy as in, oh my God, it's unusable. No, this is a perfectly serviceable camera. It just doesn't live up to the state of the art today in terms of quality. And that's the problem, is we have a set of expectations. For better or worse, Apple has set the expectation of the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Both are remarkable for their image quality. And nobody's really touched that yet. LG comes very close, and I think the GS6 is going to nail it because f/1.9 with OIS, you can't go wrong with that. So this camera has an f-stop of f/2.2, and so, it's not bad, but seriously, OIS would have saved this. You could have opened the shutter longer and possibly, tweak the noise reduction a little more. The other thing that's disappointing, as I said, is the 4 megapixel ultra pixel camera doesn't have autofocus. And so, sure, the selfie shots are all right in low light, but they're not outstanding because a lot of the shots are out of focus. So anyway, here we go. The performance of the UI, nothing really to write home about. I haven't really put the Google Now launcher on this phone yet because that's kind of my way to go. There's this new feature here. It's a whole widget that you can move around from screen to screen, and it geolocates, and based on your home location, it sets you to home or work, and you can manually force it there, and you can have different apps and folders ready to go. And then there's an out mode where you're out and about. It gives you basically your favorite apps for what you're doing based on location. It's all configurable here with a menu, and it's pretty cool. But I'm not quite sure why it's a widget, but hey, there it is. And there's something called smart folders in there. You can see the downloads and suggestions. These are, shows you last downloads and suggests some of the apps that you haven't used or have installed. Just showing it to you a little closer up. But other than that, this is Sense 7, and it's still fast and slick and doesn't modify too much in terms of settings. This is the settings screen. Again, so this is Sense 7 on top of Lollipop, so you get a lot of the features from Lollipop, and this very, very slick, very lightweight skin, which we really love. So, all in all, this is a fantastic phone in every way except for, the camera. And I'm being hard here because I know HTC can do it, and they just chose not to, and it's just not acceptable. I mean, they don't have the room to screw this up. and so I want them to do better. So yeah, this is the HTC One M9. I know it's a long review, but I'm glad you watched through the whole thing because I had a lot to say. And so stay tuned for more reviews. Like this review, tune into my YouTube channel. Find me on Twitter, I'm TNKGRL. My blog is tankgirl.com, tnkgrl.com. Yeah, stay tuned for more videos. Cheers.